All right, thank you much. Hi, everybody. How you doing? Dan Glicksman, leading demand generation nerd with Cox Media. And as we're going to engage today on how Cox Media built its content laboratory, we're going to cover a few different topics to give you a quick little view in 30 minutes time. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to get into just an example of a format and how it's evolved over time, how we do things in terms of modular content, additive, division of content and so forth, sort of repurposing, how we test and measure offers, and how it really, we go look at the front end to make sure we have success on the back end, even before we do our A/B testing. And improving conversion with sales enablement, which is probably one of the most overlooked things when it comes to content marketing in general. So I just want to get some of the obvious things out of the way first, why we're all here in the room. So the challenge, we are all at some point hitting people in the sales funnel, top, bottom, mid, after they've already bought from us. And we're trying to say something to these folks in such a way that we're getting their attention and they understand what we're saying and hopefully taking the right action. We're doing this in very small bits, and you know, if any of you have kids in here, it seems like they talk this way, you know, when they're walking around now. Clients, you know, same thing. They want things in very short bursts. Get it, gone, move on to the next, or stay with you on the trail of breadcrumbs. And we're doing it with some combination of these things. So, you know, I know there's like 15 versions of this one floating around. I've yet to see anybody create a combination of things with the equivalent of flaming plutonium or something, but I gotta say, I do want to be invited the day that somebody decides to pair up a sexy webinar with an ERP system. So anyway, we're doing all these things, various combinations of this stuff. And by the way, all of you in the room are all sending to the same people. Just want to get that out of the way. And we're doing it to humans, right? You know, it was mentioned earlier, B2B, B2C. At the end of the day, we're sending it out to people. People who are walking into polls more than ever, falling into manholes off of piers, revolutionizing the auto collision industry, and just in general, just multitasking, doing a lot of different things, except for pay attention to what we want to send them. Is that right? Right? So, knowing all this and keeping all this in mind, Cox Media, you know, with this always going on, we look at different ways in how we can, you know, spark that attention. So, one of the ways is really keeping on top of the new content formats that are out there. So, we ask ourselves, when we bring these content and how we're going to deliver it, these questions up front here. So the content itself, is it engaging? Is it a story? Is it something of interest that our clients want to know about? Does the format even make sense for the story that we're trying to tell? Does it allow me to leave that trail of breadcrumbs so that once they get to the first part, maybe they keep on going to something else down the road, eventually, hopefully, to a sale or upsell? And is it a good investment? Now, the story, the content delivery tool, all in itself might look like, you know, the puppy, the monkey, the baby, but pieced together, it doesn't always equate out to anything. It might equate out to the, you know, the puppy monkey baby, which is still giving me nightmares since the Super Bowl. So I'll start with the infographic. We're just going to talk about this one in terms of content. We all have done this. The world has become obliterated with infographics left and right. There's all these tools out there that let any Joe Schmo build a very simple version one. But it served a great purpose for storytelling. But it has evolved into such a way that it allows you to tell a little bit more of the story. So when somebody catches onto that infographic, they're able to see and dig down into some of those statistics that might be associated with one part of that story, you know, upon mouse over, and I'm sure a lot of people in here have seen it. Now more so, they're even getting a little bit better than that and allowing us to track further engagement because they're embedding things like video and podcasts and all kinds of stuff. And you can get an idea of, all right, well, this infographic went out, and I could see it had this many pages, but you know, what was coming from each of these parts? What was the story? And those pieces of engagement really get you to a place where, hey, what should I be writing about next? So that's where we get into the discussion around modular content. We start getting into addition and division, and I promise you, no fourth grade math here. We're going to talk about the first one, which is divisible content, which is where you're taking and sort of repurposing a longer piece, you know, a piece that has a lot of different ideas in it, and you're subdividing it, so you're taking a giant puzzle, turning it into little pieces, and each little piece of that puzzle standing on its own as its own good picture. And so we use this because we're taking pieces we've already done our background work on, our studying and so forth. We're just putting it into new formats. It's quicker to get out there. The ROI is a little bit better because you didn't have to put in the same effort as you did to build it the first time out. It works in a crunch. I don't know if anybody in here has ever heard from sales, I need something by noon today, just about this. And you're like, oh, God, yeah, right. That never happens, right? No, never, right? So it works in a crunch. I have this little piece that I just was able to peel off. Maybe it's a blog you author in 2 hours like they were talking about in the last session. And another thing it allows you to do is take that big piece, and if you have the right tools, allows you to look at, hey, people are spending time here, here, and here. Maybe this calls for a piece of content on its own. So here's an example of what we did, one of the example of divisible content in action. We had this one ebook that went out. It's titled 7 Keys to Building Your Brand. It was a pretty heavy piece, but it got great engagement, really super engagement with our target market, mainly small businesses, down to the mom and pops. I mean, if you think about mom and pops engaging with content, I don't know about you, but I know we all think like, oh, we're trying to get the office of CFO and so forth. This is a whole new animal, let me tell you. So we had some good readership and so forth. So what we did was we took the content, and using a tool that we use to host this content, Uberflip, we're able to heat map each of the pieces of content and see where the mouse clicks were really hanging around, where people were, what pages they were staying on for the most time and so forth. And we found that there were various places in this ebook that like say, hey, maybe we should take a look at blowing these up into something else. So we found 4 bullets right here, 4 ideas that we said, this might be worth a blog or something else, and you see them here. Now, it's important to look at these things with an editorial eye, because you got to look at the context at which these things were written inside that original piece of content, and not just say, oh, people standing here, they must have wanted to, I'm going to make something up of this. For us, the Starbucks example is just an example of something they did years ago that didn't really sit on its own. So we decided, you know what, stepping away. We're not going to do anything with that one, even though it had a ton of interaction. The other ideas did call for extra stuff from us. So before going out and taking these things and repurposing them, dividing them up and so forth, you ask yourself simple questions. Can I afford this new format? Does it bring clarity to the story? Again, the trail of breadcrumbs. Is it leading someone from point A to point B? Has my audience engaged with it elsewhere? And I'm going to say this, I have a segment of our audience that under no circumstances will ever join a webinar, ever. So I know from us, even though every statistic says webinar, for this sort of thing, I will never do it. So you have to know your audience, okay? Don't just assume that broad statistics apply to everybody. And then just, again, the benchmarking, what that's telling us in general, as I just said, the industry, match it against, what we typically see. So here it is in action. We turned that 7 branding ebook into a series of 7 videos, short, digestible, 2 to 5 minute bites, some success stories, a series of 5 of them, and a 7-day blog series that just let people, log on in and go one to the next, to the next, to the next. And so what it did was, it was different parts of the story brought forth in different ways that appeal to different people, because not everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, ebook, yay! Not everybody's going to love an infographic, but it allowed us, if we gain somebody's interest by the medium, to engage with the content and then possibly move sideways to another part of the story and hopefully go all the way through. Key to this, obviously, amplifying it, social media, testing out how those stories work. You're going to find that maybe story number 3 in the middle of them all is what gets people to, back to number 1 and so forth. So monitoring results and so forth, seeing where people are jumping from point to point. The other way we go is sort of the opposite, additive, where we're taking a bunch of smaller pieces and looking at success and saying, hey, can we maybe tie all these together and figure out a way to make them work? Also works great in a crunch. If you're coming up, your time delayed and we don't have much time, money even, you might be able, again, to piece together a whole bunch of stuff you've already created with a few minor cosmetic changes, maybe a few statistical updates, get that out there just like that, and create something that had far better engagement than all the pieces individually. So the whole greater than the parts. And I'm going to show you an example of that. If we can move forward. Okay, here we go. So here's what we did in this case. We kind of trolled our own material and trolled the local markets, looking for everything that was out there. So we looked at our website at places where people are spending time. We looked at our content hub. We even turned to our SEO tool to say, hey, what are people searching for? Like if here's what we do. What are people searching for? What are they looking at to potentially get to us? So we put all those pieces of information together. And in this case, we came across, it's getting near the holidays. We had all these pieces we created over the last 5 years that had different engagement levels on different media and so forth. Let's see if we can use this thematically to put together one thing for people to latch onto. This can be done with myth busting, all other things. But you just got to make sure that whatever you come up with is right for the time. So I would have never come up with this theme, even though we've seen all these great things for holiday interactions. I'd never launch it in the spring, obviously. So some combinations you can consider when doing this. Blog articles, tweets, all put together. They make a nice ebook in a pinch. Ebooks, curated content, infographics, all come together to make a good landing page if needed. Again, these things are great in a pinch. And so when we get all that stuff together, we take a look. You almost kind of do an inventory. Okay, here's the story. Figure out why these go together. In our case, it was a holiday thematic story. But one of the things we realized is like, gosh, we have a lot of these heavy ebook pieces. These things are just, they're just too much for people. So what we did was we decided to actually create some stuff on the fly, some very light pieces, things that weren't necessarily, hey, here's about branding and so forth. It was more so, hey, you know what? For your small business, here's a holiday playlist. This one's on us. We just put this together, find it if needed. And we had an incredible engagement with tweets on this and so forth that led to the content I'm about to show you. So here's where it all came together. We created what sort of looked like a holiday advent calendar. You punch out and get the chocolates out, though. No chocolates reaching in your computer, obviously. But we created this and promoted it and so forth. The various pieces that all went together with certain dates that each one of them became available. And it was again, some of the whole became much better than the parts. Our success on this one was overwhelming. In fact, it was great because as we kept on promoting it, people would go back and read the ones that they hadn't punched out, so grabbing those chocolates and stuffing their faces with them. Again, no chocolate's real, but all this great pieces of content that we probably never would have gotten these folks on. And the other thing is, there's some people that looked at this and they saw certain headlines all wrapped up in here. That one's not interesting, that one's not. That one is. And so is that one, but not that one. And we saw that sort of thing happen as well, and then people reaching out to us. So again, it was a way for us to get a whole bunch of ideas that were successful on their own out together and to get people to reenact or enact, get involved with some of these pieces that they may have never seen before in the past. So one of the most important things, and we keep on hearing it over and over again throughout these sessions, are really measuring, really going in and understanding what's working and what's not working, right? So we had this idea, and you're like, oh, this was awesome. This is looking great. This is super. Look at this advent calendar. It's about to go. We're all high-fiving each other, ready to rock. And then when the revenue numbers come in, did it execute like this? And that's what we're trying to avoid any way possible. And there's a few things that come into play why this happens. You may have done everything right on the front end in building that content, but you kind of forgot a few very important things. One of them is related to just simple testing. I mean, listen, I know I'm stating the obvious here, right? A/B testing. I'm sure pretty much everyone in the room does this. But don't forget it. But even a step before this, right, to figure out, okay, how am I going to put this verbiage on a display ad? Or how am I going to put this on an email subject line? Things like looking at your search history. Again, I mentioned this before. We use Conductor Searchlight to figure out, hey, how are people looking for our solutions? Like, what are the searches that are coming up there? What are they typing in? In my lingo, it might be completely different than what the end customer's lingo is. They're typing in completely different. So we want to try and match that up as much as possible because that's the link. That's what's going to get their attention to even maybe look at you in the first place. You don't capture them on that, whatever it is, subject line, display, etc. Gone, all right? And the other one, spooky part, right? This is a scary one for all of us. Go to sales. You're talking to the sales guy up here. I forgot to mention that part. So go to sales. Ask them, yes, I know we could see clicks. I know we could see all those engagements. They went to our website. But has the salesperson ever told you, you know what, I had this client reply directly on an email. They didn't click through or anything, but they used the information you sent out as a way to get more headcount for their department. I'm like, partnership stuff. And then we take these little pieces of anecdotal data and triangulate them, and sometimes it becomes a different piece of content. So don't be afraid of going to sales. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we get into my favorite thing to discuss, which is sales enablement. So one of the things, there's so many definitions out there when it comes to sales enablement, and I have them listed here as a coaching, training, onboarding, content creation, analysis, basic sales training. It's this and a whole lot more. All those words you see back there on that word cloud, it's a whole lot of stuff. And it's you as a marketer, you as a content creator, you're putting all this effort into putting this stuff together and communicating to the audience in a specific way that they're going to engage with you, right? Then you say, you know what, sales, we've sent out this campaign, look for responders or hand raisers to come in, here's how you react to it, here's what it was about, but the problem is this. This is their, and was mine, mentality. Marketing stuff, oh gosh, I never open anything from them. I got clients to speak to. I even get content sent to me. Why? Well, this is kind of it, and I use Tommy Boy for all those, hopefully a lot of you have seen this movie. There's a scene in this movie that every time I see it, I'm like, you know what? This is what's going on here. Where you have sales guy David Spade on the left here, who's, after the guy says, let me say maybe, he says, well, I'd just like to add the spectrometer readout on the nickel cadmium alloy mix. And the guy's like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's how sales thinks marketing talks. And that's a lot of times why sales is like, I am not opening up any of those emails. This is a waste of my time. They're people. They are people too. They're not robots. And it kind of goes back to that example you saw a little bit earlier of that crazy, crazy verbiage that sometimes we sound like. I mean, would you ever put something like this on your website necessarily, just talking to people? Probably not, right? Let engineers talk with each other on that, not necessarily to the end buyer. Meanwhile, us marketing people kind of think the other thing is happening. Our brake pads are really cool. Hey, you want to go golfing, get some drinks, sign the deal at the end of the day? That's a lot of times marketing believes that's what happens the second they leave the office. And okay, while that is completely true, you know what? We do care about the marketing things, the marketing and the sales enablement that we get. We do not want to make a fool of ourselves, and really, it's a couple reasons why sales will avoid calling your responders, because A, they won't make any money on it, which hopefully is not the truth with any of your companies, but B, because they don't understand it, all right? They're prideful people. They don't want to be caught in, oh, whatever, but I just know you responded to it. So, we come across times where you're wondering, like, are people getting back to these responders? So I say to content marketers, think about sales. I always think of Escher. I think of this painting, this drawing actually, where you have all these people in different points of gravity, things happening. They all seem to make sense, but when you really look at it, I'm like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But sales kind of acts this way. Sales is sort of, they operate on their own point of gravity. Right? And we as marketers, we tend to want to say, well, here it is, go use it the way I said it. Instead of saying, okay, how are you talking about this? What's going on in the trenches here? And how can I give you this enablement in such a way that makes sense to you and me and the customer? Oftentimes, the way you want to speak to the customer is really no different than sales. All right? Don't get too technical. Don't scare them off. All right? That's very easy to do. So I always say, when it comes to sales, go to their point of gravity. And so I have here a few examples of some things that we've done to prep our salespeople. Some of them a little bit more in depth than others, and then I'm going to get into one that I used to use back in my old software days, which was wildly successful. So sales prep kit, we say, okay, hey, this campaign, this went out this month. And what we always try and do is share it with their leadership a good couple weeks in advance to give them time to socialize it, because you know what, they need some context around it. So you're best off, working with, if you're a field marketer or if you're working with a specific market, getting someone out there who can kind of champion this and really speak about it in a way that they're going to understand. And again, I don't want to make sales seem like buffoons or anything. They're not. I might be. But you know what? Just talk like people, okay? Give a one-sheet summary of the entire content piece. And I'm going to get to that in a second. And just some basic talking points. Give them a reason why you think people are clicking through on this stuff. So another page here, here's just an example of some conversation starters, some questions that can actually help take them down the path. So, one of the things I remember on the software side is we had inside salespeople. A lot of people have inside sales in their companies, just curious. Yeah, I see some hands going up. And so they got to be agile, right? In my old organization, I had inside salespeople that maybe, today they get 5 leads in, and the first one is to the office of the CFO. The next one is to the CMO. Next one, they're expected to sell human capital management. And they just need to be able to be agile and get the high points quickly so they get it to such a point where they can get it to field sales, if that's going to happen, or if they're in inside sales, selling it end to end. So we do our best to give them what are some of those probing questions and so forth. So just an example here, statistics that they can help out. Again, I'm going to show you another format to do this. Here's an example of the one sheet that I mentioned before. And again, I kind of call it cubicle wallpaper. So when you send out that campaign and we're expecting responders in or people responding to a piece, very simple way of saying, hey, that client that came in that from this, here's what they looked at, and here's probably what they're thinking, and here's why you want to talk about this. So we have an example of what the content piece looks like, the visual, because we're all visual people. They go to the site, the link you give them, oh, there it is, right there. It's easier than seeing a whole bunch of titles all over the place. So be visual when you can, right? Just a summary of the piece of content. This was sent out when we did this. It was after an event. It was a response, whatever it might have been. Just a quick high-level overview on what it is you sent out. Again, some simple questions that you can go into, some of the goals of the content, some topics that you want your salespeople to be familiar with that are happening maybe in the real time, all right? The reason why this is important to your client and why they probably clicked it is because right now, ... CMOs are under pressure to right? Try and do it again is as much good English as possible. And then some things that you're doing to, let them know how you're getting the word out, right? This is being tweeted out, this has been sent this way, it's been direct mail, whatever it might be. Just let them know. And the one thing that's not on here, which I implore everybody, especially if you're in a CRM system, the campaign ID, whatever it is, because I know we all want to be able to track or see the influence of certain successes. So I usually, if you're going down that road, put it on there. It might be that last second reminder to them, oh, use this if I actually, create an opportunity from it in the system. The other example, this is more from not what we're doing at Cox, but this really relates more so to my days back in software. And so to give you a little bit of context, I walk into a situation where we had marketing folks, and at the time when no one knew what demand generation was, but I was hired as a liaison. That's what it was called at the time. You're kind of a liaison between marketing and sales. And so one of the problems was there were all these training programs. The marketing was putting together all these great pieces of content, putting it out there, and then sitting salespeople down 3 times a day for an hour a day on these training calls with 60-page decks. If you are still doing that, stop today. Promise me. Not a good thing. At the time, and I was telling Andrew about this, I became sort of the gatekeeper of these campaigns, these decks, and I wouldn't let one out the door. I wouldn't let the field marketer schedule a training unless that deck was down to 10 pages. Nearly got me fired, and it was actually sales who came to my rescue and said, no. This is how we want it. Yes, 10 slides. We don't want anything more. And so what I have here is just one example of how I sort of set that up with sales to give them the one-page cheat sheet, or as I like to call cube wallpaper, so that they could turn to and just quickly be on the fly some of the major points instead of thumbing through and seeing all the different success stories and so forth. Just something they can quickly turn to. So the upper level corner, the upper left here, the high-level solution. What does it do? All right. I always use this example for carpet. It's XJ5 formula carpet. Repels all stains, and just kind of a high level of what it is. Customer pain point problems. What do you do when you have company over, somebody spills something on the floor like red wine, or something like that? questions. Do you have children that run around the house with food? Yes, I do. Whatever they might be in your world. Solution highlights. We have the ability to install this carpet without moving a single piece of furniture. It just sprays right underneath. I mean, I know that's not possible, but you get the idea. Success stories. Last week we did an installation right down the block. The first 2 days later, their kid got out of the refrigerator, a big thing of grape juice, and decided to make a big happy face on their white carpet in the living room. You walk in there today, you won't even see it. Success story. Competitive landscape. Well, competitor, you know what? I know you've spoken to this person as well. They do complementary things, but you know, some of the things that we do better that they can talk to again as humans. And then sales indicators. You know, hey, you know, we thought about you know, making some home improvements to our house. Ding, ding, ding. I might have a sale here. You know, oh, my carpet's real cruddy. You know, just things for the salesperson that say, hey, if you hear this, you probably want to not let this person off the phone. So again, just things that will help them do their, you know, do what they're doing. So at the end of the day, with when it comes to salespeople, just, you know, storytell with them as much as you do with your customers. You know, and it's funny, and Rex out here, who I work with in the audience, he'll get a kick out of this. He always does. Back in the day, in my past, I used to work, you've seen The Wolf of Wall Street? Most people in here seen The Wolf of Wall Street? Yeah, so I know them intimately well from my old days. And I used to sit next to a sales guy. I mean, they were as nuts as, okay, absolutely true, everything you saw in the movie, as crazy as those people were. I used to sit next to this guy, like, Mr. Jones, put on your spacesuit because we're going to the moon. And he was talking to C-level executives, people who are liquid for a couple $1 million. Same people you're emailing probably, right? And, you know, it all goes back to, you know, the message, fun, we're humans. These people would stay on the phone listening to the guy who introed with that very lead-in. It was amazing to me, right? I'm not saying your next piece has to be nutcase, you know, we're going to the moon, but get creative, all right? Get creative. Get, you know, be a little bit fun. You know, take it, you know, I'll tell you, in that movie, one of the things that was brilliant was how they told the story, right? They told it in such a way, it was so compelling, they couldn't say no. Think about those things without getting too technical. You know, creating that sizzle. The sizzle is not dead. You know, the whole phrase, the sizzle sold the steak. You know, people say, oh, that's so 50s and 60s and Mad Men. It's not. It's not. The sizzle is still very much alive. Use it to your advantage, okay? Hey, did someone put this on my back? What's going on here? Click me? Oh, who did that? So anyway, so that's it for me. Wow, did it with 2 minutes left, not too shabby. So again, keep your message, you know, fun, clear, work with sales, all right? And work with new formats, test things on the front end, figure out how people are asking you and using that to figure out how you want to say it, all right? So thank you very much. Appreciate your time, everybody. Hold on 30 minutes.